Hi, friends. This is Dr. Arpita Gupta Dipalma, and you're listening to my podcast, From Pissed Off to Poised. This show is for busy women physicians and professionals just like you who are ready to take control of their emotions while learning how to excel in juggling all the things they are responsible for in life. It's for overextended mamas who are trying to figure out how to work smarter, not harder. It's for multitasking women who are tired of playing the role of the angry and resentful air traffic controller, who simply want to learn how to create a life that is more calm, intentional, and joyful for themselves. My goal is to help you learn how to eliminate the overwhelm and maintain your composure in high-stress situations that you face with the demands in your day-to-day life. Because I get you guys, this was totally me. You are not alone. I invite you to embark on your journey of transformation with me. Enjoy the listen. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of From Pissed Off to Poised. I want to thank you guys for listening and sharing the podcast. I am still loving all the feedback that's coming in, all the questions and just the comments. It's really been satisfying and gratifying for me to know that it's reaching and resonating, many of you, and that you're finding some of these tips and tools useful to implement in your day-to-day. So I thought today, with the holidays coming up pretty quickly on us, and with what we discussed last week with regards to heart-mind coherence, that today it would probably be really beneficial for me to go into a more in-depth protocol. And what I mean by that really is to give you some of the thought processes regarding why the steps of the anger protocol really work, so you can have an explanation in a sense. You can have a more in-depth understanding of where I'm coming from for this. And so what I'm going to go through today are all of those steps for the protocol, but then also give you a little bit more information regarding each of the steps. So it's going to be a little bit, as I said, more in depth. So the very first step to creating your customized plan for how you want to respond rather than react whenever you encounter one of these activating situations is to make your plan in advance. Thinking about it and creating it in a time where you are feeling calm and in a good space and really intentional is super important. Because once you have this plan in mind for what you're going to do, you don't have to figure it out in the heat of the moment. It's becoming something that will be autopilot, automatic for you, and you don't have to put more brain energy into figuring it out at the last minute. So that really is the most important thing to recognize, is that whenever you've created something in advance, whenever you're planning to do something in advance, if this, then I'm jumping to my protocol, then you're going to be acting with more intention, even when it's difficult to do so. All right, so let's go back through this. And some of this is going to be kind of duplicative or repetitive to what we've talked about in the past, and that's okay. We're just reviewing for everybody. But the first step is to recognize what activates you. Okay. Step one, I see you anger. I see that I'm activated. All right. This is where we get to build awareness during that calm time around what exactly is setting us off. And as I talked about, my main sources of anger were that urgency for completing the to-do list. It had to be done perfectly. And this came from that resident check-in, check-out list, right? Where I had the need for that perfectionism. Like, what's going to happen if this guy who follows me doesn't take care of all the things that are needed for this patient? Being a controller, being a stickler, this is something that is super ingrained in me, where I want to try to have control over all of the situations. So this is another component of why the urgency about completing the to-do list would lead to anger. And thirdly, I get to relax only when all the things were done. And that relaxation time never came. So it was a vicious cycle. So my one main source of anger is urgency. And when I broke down where that urgency was coming from even further, I figured out the perfectionism issues, the tendency to be a controller, a stickler about things, and the belief that I could only relax or rest when things were done. Another main activator for me, another main area where I noticed I would get angry, is anything that was perceived as a threat to my self-worth. And this came on mostly after I chose to let go of the clinical side of my career. And again, certain circumstances around that specifically, where I'd blame my hubby for not being able to practice anymore, where I had the fear of what other people were thinking about me because I wasn't practicing, where I had the fear of wasting my education or disappointing my parents. So those are the three kind of components underneath the lack of self-worth or the threat to my self-worth. And then the third activator for me was just my basic day-to-day, with the kids pushing me over the edge when I had reached my limit. I was exhausted. I was tired. So what things in your day-to-day push you over the edge? For me, this was a major activator, because when I was stretched thin and that bomb was dropped, I would go to my anger reaction, 0 to 100, super fast. So step one, recognize what activates you and really do a deep dive here. Once you figure that out, why it's so activating for you and where did it come from? And I'm going to refer you guys back to episodes 2 through 4. That's where we talk about the awareness. There's some worksheets and other tools that you can use there that will help you do this. Okay, step 2, when you encounter the situation that's activating you, I want you to take a deep, slow breath. I want you to say to yourself, I need a minute right here, and that's okay. I want you to remind yourself that there is no urgency to respond in that situation. When we take these slow, deep breaths, it actually, on the inhale, activates our sympathetic nervous system. But on the exhale, when we intentionally extend the breath, even through pursed lips, that's what activates the parasympathetic nervous system. And this parasympathetic signal is what tells your brain that you are okay, that there is no danger. There is no need to respond in the heat of the moment. Okay, so step 2, take a slow, deep breath. Step 3, I want you to make an excuse to remove yourself from the situation if you can tell that you're going to show up in a way that you're going to regret later, i.e., you're going to yell, you're going to scream, you're going to have some form of unproductive reaction that is not going to serve you in the end. And this, obviously, removing yourself from the situation is going to happen only when it's feasible. And we can talk about it a little bit later too, what you do when you're in situations where you can't leave. But for right now, we're going to talk about making that excuse, saying, you know what, I forgot one thing. I need to go take care of this. I'll be right back. Or, you know what, I got to go use the restroom. Give me 1 second. I need to take care of this first. I'll be right back. Do whatever you need to do to get out of that situation. And then don't worry. Don't have two thoughts about it afterwards. Remove yourself. Step 4, I want you to go find a safe, private space now that you've removed yourself. And once you find that space, be it the bathroom, your car, a closet, who cares what it is, as long as it's safe and private for you, I want you to put your hand on your heart. And this is where we're really going to focus on that breathing. It's called the attitude breathing, like I referred to in the last episode. We're going to take the 5 deep, slow breaths, and we're going to laser focus on our breaths. As we inhale, we're going to count to 5. We're going to hold it for 2 seconds. And then we're going to exhale and count to 10 if we can. You're going to breathe in to activate that sympathetic and then extend the exhale, the breathing out. And doing this all while you're thinking about it as it's going directly to and from your heart. You're breathing feelings of positivity and love and self-care into your heart as you're doing the inhale, and you're breathing it out, envisioning spreading it out to the world as you do your exhale. You can tell yourself with each inhale, I am safe, I am loved. Or you can think of a past experience or person that simply fills your heart with love and joy while you're doing this breathing. You want to be super intentional with it. You're going to disconnect from the world and focus on your body and your breath. And you're going to gradually begin to feel your heart rate become less erratic. When we have anger or irritation and frustration, these emotions are what lead us to have an incoherent heart rate pattern. And these emotional incoherences cause additional stress on our nervous system while raising our cortisol levels, that stress hormone. And this leads to the depletion of our energy sources and the inability to think coherently. Instead, when we breathe in love or other positive emotions, we are increasing our coherent heart rhythms and also increasing the synchronization between our heart and our brain. This leads to improved mental clarity and cognitive performance, amongst other things. And this is where I really dive deep about this in the previous episode when we're talking about the heart-mind coherence. Okay. Not only breathing in and breathing out and doing the inhale and exhale to activate those symptoms, but having those positive, loving, joyous thoughts in your mind when you're breathing into your heart and breathing it out to the world and the people around you. All right. Step 5. Once you've done this breathing and once you've kind of noticed you've settled your glitter, as I like to say, I want you to label your emotion out loud. And this might sound as simple as I'm feeling angry, I'm pissed off, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm annoyed. And it could be one of those other underlying emotions that we've talked about as well. Once you've identified it and you've said it out loud, I want you to open up to it. I want you to allow it. I want you to embrace it like a labor pain, ladies. Okay. I want you to notice where it's showing up for you in your body and just sit with it. And when we're doing this sitting with it, you might actually realize that the emotion isn't really anger or frustration or being ticked off, that it's actually something completely different. And this might be when you first start to notice that that anger is getting muddled up with something that you can't quite put your finger on. And this is where we talk about that underlying emotion. So step 5, label your emotion out loud. Step 6, I want you to process the emotion. I want you to feel that anger as it passes through your body. And this is how we're moving from reaction to response, because we're going to allow ourselves to sit with it. Where is the activation, that anger, that frustration showing up for you in your body? And when you start to become more aware of how it's showing up for you, when you start to notice the tells in your body, then you're slowly shifting your path into more of your prefrontal cortex. So I want you to really take some time here to sit and notice the feeling in your body. For me, when I am angry or frustrated, I immediately notice the tension in my shoulders. And I have actually visualized this as concrete blocks in my shoulders, almost like they're grinding against each other to get me to move or have any sort of flexibility. So when I can sit with it and just feel that tension of those concrete blocks and just be present with it, it actually slowly starts to improve. It slowly starts to dissipate. And this is how we can begin to notice the intensity of that emotion beginning to gradually decrease. And this is how we're getting to neutral. One of the other common emotions that I have felt is just stress. Okay. When I feel stressed out, I'm not necessarily angry about it. When I feel stressed, I also notice the tension actually going up in my neck. I might notice some heat in my neck. I might notice some palpitations in my heart. So when I can actually sit down and be present with those vibrations in my body, those sensations in my body, I am more in tune to it and I'm actually processing it. So it's a productive way of handling the emotions. It takes, on average, 90 seconds to 5 minutes to do this, to process that emotion. So rather than sitting with it and like doing those other ways of handling the emotion, which are not helpful for us, the resisting, the reacting, or the avoiding, if we can just process it and sit with it for a minute, it actually goes away, gets better, and we don't have to suffer through it as long. Step 7, decide when you want to revisit the situation. You get to pick now. Okay. Now that you have noticed the emotion, you've isolated yourself, you've processed through it, and you've kind of reactivated your ability to function and come from your prefrontal cortex, you get to ask yourself, am I going to be able to go back to the situation right now and maintain my cool and respond rather than react? Or do I need to give myself a little more time? Do I need to schedule the revisiting to a better time that suits me? Because I need to do a little bit more research on what they're bringing to me. Or I need to call in backups like my husband to deal with my teenage daughter. You get to decide here with intention when it's going to best serve you to revisit that situation. Because when emotion is high, intelligence is low. And yes, although you've processed it, it's still a little raw. And so this is where you get to experiment a little. You get to see, can I go back and handle it? If not, I'm going to pause again and make an excuse and leave. Or if you know it's not something you're going to be able to handle, there is no problem with rescheduling. The whole point is to show up with intention, with how you want to show up when you encounter the situation again. And then lastly, step 8, which I think is probably one of the most important steps, is to reflect. Okay. I want you to spend some time after you've gone through this circumstance, the encounter in your mind, and really reflect and be self-aware about what happened, what transpired. Why were you so activated? Was there a reason that this situation set you off, even though it's not exactly the same as other situations you've encountered with a similar flavor? Can you consider what might be underlying the anger? If you remove the anger from the situation, is there another emotion there that you don't really enjoy feeling? And this is where I really, really recommend that you journal. You spend some time just writing it out, because when we allow ourselves to put pen to paper, we actually get a lot more deeper with regards to what is going on. We're tapping into that subconscious mind. So even just starting with the prompt, what was wrong there, my love? Why were you so upset? Coming to yourself with curiosity and unconditional love when you're wanting to do this reflection is the best way to approach yourself with kindness, because when you are giving yourself compassion and grace here, that's what allows you to really uncover what might be going on underneath. Remember, anger makes us feel more powerful, more in control, and it's keeping us safe in the heat of that specific moment. So we get to ask ourselves, what's the anger really covering up? And as I've talked about, it's oftentimes a fear that we have, including the fear of experiencing another uncomfortable emotion. And this is why over time, anger becomes more comfortable for us to feel compared to hurt or shame, disappointment, loss of control, any of the other negative emotions that we don't want to feel. Because after having this reaction repeatedly, it's become our comfortable go-to. It's become an easy habit. And we know how it's going to end up, even though it doesn't feel great. Having that certainty of how it ends up is better than feeling the uncertainty around the other emotions that we haven't allowed ourselves to experience so far. Noticing that even when we show up angry, and even though we have done the work to try to be better, when it happens, we often regret the way we showed up later. So the key now is to put in that extra energy and effort needed to pause before we react. All right. And that takes practice. And just like this neural pathway has been established for anger, the new neural pathway to show up with a response rather than reacting will become effortless. It's just going to take a little bit of time because you're building that new neural pathway. That experience, when you first notice yourself pause and shift to response, when you do that the first time, that becomes your own incentive to keep on doing it because it feels so good. And not only is it going to feel so good for you, but the people around you are going to notice as well, and they're going to respond differently as well. They may or may not. We can't control other people, but I know from personal experience with my kids, their response changed as well. And this is what drove me to keep on doing it. And when we have those setbacks, it is okay. This is our opportunity for further growth, where we can give ourselves compassion and we can give ourselves grace. And then we can begin to explore what in particular with this situation, even though I've had it kind of happen before, specifically set me off this time. This is where we get to do the work. This is where we continue to do the work as we grow, as we evolve, as we live. I have enjoyed this episode. I hope you guys take a lot of nuggets away from it for what you can start to implement in your life. I know with the holidays coming, as I said, that this might be a tool that you really get to practice a lot and use. Hopefully you don't, but who are we kidding? We're coming up to the holidays. There's always things that are going on that set us off. So use your tools. I really enjoyed sharing it with you. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. If you guys over the holidays want to learn more about this, I have obviously the podcast and I've got the links in all of the show notes that give you some areas of further exploration. I'm also going to offer that I am launching a group program starting in January. It's a small group program that I am doing because I really enjoy coaching women one-to-one, but I also have kind of reached my max for how many people I can bring on that way. So I want to share the basic concepts of mindset coaching with my sisters, my friends, my colleagues. And I figured out a way to do it where we're doing 6 people in a group. We're going to meet once a week for 9 weeks, and we're going to coach. We're going to coach hard, and I'm going to teach you these foundational concepts that will get you to have that transformation. In addition to the 9 group sessions, you'll also get 3 one-on-one sessions with me where you get to really dive in and focus on what concerns or issues you have that you want to work on. So it's a perfect hybrid of both. It gives you a little bit of everything, and I'm excited to offer this to you. So if you're interested in learning more, there'll be a link for the group program in the show notes, and I look forward to having you join me there, potentially in January. All right, guys, have a great day. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next week. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of From Pissed Off to Poised. Remember, transformation is a journey, not a destination. So enjoy the ride. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review From Pissed Off to Poised on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback supports my mission to get this podcast out to help other women physicians and professionals like you on their path to creating a more peaceful life with more intention and more joy. I enjoy reading every message I get with your input and feedback on my journey, so keep them coming. And if you have a friend who might enjoy the listen, please share this episode and share with them. Lastly, if you want to learn more about my coaching programs and course offerings, check out my website at www.thoughtworkmd.com. Feel free to reach out to me to learn more about investing in yourself through one-to-one coaching so you can start living the life you've always wanted. This show is for general educational and entertainment purposes only. Life coaching is not a substitute for therapy or medical treatment.